Hey guys, and welcome back for today's video where over this past day we got 4 brand new polls, 2 of them taking a look at the national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary, and then we have 2 state-specific results out of Nevada, which is one of those first 4 early caucus and primary states, and then also an interesting poll out of the state of North Carolina. And we're going to start here by looking at this week's morning consult numbers, and if you're interested in looking at all of this polling data for yourself, I'll have links posted down in the video description. So I'm going to spend the most time here on these morning consult numbers because they do a great job of really diving into the numbers and showing a lot of the different strengths and weaknesses of the candidates. And it's just really interesting to see how those numbers are developing on a week-to-week basis. So we're going to start here with the overall national picture. And it's getting a bit more competitive at the top from where we were a week ago, where Joe Biden receding a couple of points. In first place at 29%, where you have Bernie Sanders staying there. In second place at 23%. Back in third place, you have Elizabeth Warren at 14%, and then Buttigieg and Bloomberg each at 8%. Andrew Yang at 5%, Tom Steyer at 4%, and Amy Klobuchar at 3%. And then you also see that Michael Bloomberg as well as Andrew Yang were each able to pick up 1 percentage point from where they were a week ago. And then going down and taking a look at the early primary states as well as the very important Super Tuesday states. And we see those early primary states, Joe Biden taking another little bit of a step back here in those areas in this poll at 27%, but still in a pretty good position there in first place. Bernie Sanders in second at 19%. And maybe we have to start seriously considering Tom Steyer. Now, I know his national numbers are still very low, but we have been seeing him take a step forward in these early primary and caucus states. In this instance, he's at 15 percentage points in third place, gaining 5 points from where he was a week ago as he continues to pump his own wealth into advertisements in those areas. And even though Tom Steyer is not polling very well nationally, if he's able to have enough success in the early states where he becomes a factor, then all of a sudden that can boost his chances on a national stage. We'll see if this strategy works out for him or not. I actually think Tom Steyer did pretty well in the debate that we just had this past night, so we'll see if he's able to build off of that positive momentum or not. But in a Democratic primary where there's a lot of animosity in general towards very wealthy billionaires, especially those that would try to buy an election and get more exposure by using their own personal wealth, I don't think that's necessarily the recipe to have long-term success throughout a primary on the Democratic side of things, but we'll see if Tom Steyer is able to have that success or not. And then we also see Elizabeth Warren not doing as well in these early states as we saw from her a few months ago. In this instance, she's in fourth place at 12%. Also, Pete Buttigieg showing a little bit more weakness in these areas where he's now down to 9% in the early states, down 2 points. Michael Bloomberg at 5 percentage points, but he's not going to be a serious factor in those early states. For whatever reason, he decided that he's not going to be going all in these areas, and he's not even on the ballot. He's going to be putting more of his emphasis on after we get through these early states. But at that point in time, he's not going to be talked about all that much in terms of the results that we get from those early states, which is a lot of free media that a lot of these other campaigns are going to be getting. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle for Michael Bloomberg. And it really makes me question how seriously Bloomberg is actually trying to win this 2020 Democratic nomination. My tinfoil hat theory on this is that he's trying to build up his own political brand by pumping out all of these advertisements. But at the end of the day, he's waiting to see who's going to win the 2020 Democratic nomination. And if it's somebody like a Joe Biden or a Pete Buttigieg, then he's going to stay on the sidelines. But if it's a progressive like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren who wants to have serious structural change, then maybe Michael Bloomberg, with the political clout that he's been able to build up through this process, throws his hat in the ring as an independent to try to derail a progressive winning on the Democratic side. That's just my 2 cents on it, and just my own theory on that particular scenario. But then we also see the Super Tuesday states. They mirror a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the overall national numbers, where you have Biden leading the way there at 28%, with Bernie in second place at 23%, Elizabeth Warren at 15%, and then everyone else is in single digits with Bloomberg at 9%, Buttigieg at 7%, Yang at 5%, Steyer, Klobuchar each at 3%, and then Tulsi Gabbard at 2 percentage points. And then we see the breakup in terms of the different age demographics and based on generation. So Gen Z very much in the Bernie Sanders camp at 45%. All the other candidates are significantly behind him. We have Biden there at 15%, Andrew Yang in third at 12%, Warren in fourth at 11, and then everyone else is significantly behind that. The millennials, we have Bernie Sanders leading the way at 38%, followed by Joe Biden at 21, Elizabeth Warren at 15, Andrew Yang at 8. The Gen Xers have Biden leading the way at 30, Bernie Sanders at 22, Elizabeth Warren at 15, and then the Boomers have Joe Biden leading at 35%, Elizabeth Warren at 14, Bernie Sanders at 13, Bloomberg at 11, Pete Buttigieg at 10. So essentially, we're heading towards primary season, and in general, the people who tend to vote in a primary tend to be on the little bit more older age demographic as opposed to the different age differences that you see in a general election, which is likely to help somebody like a Joe Biden. But if you get above average turnout from the younger age demographics, such as the millennials or even the Gen Zs, which aren't a huge sample size, obviously, by any means, because it's only 18 to 21-year-olds in that instance. But if you're able to get higher than expected turnout from those individuals, that might be able to make enough of a difference for Bernie Sanders to seriously contend for this thing, especially given how dominant he is with these particular age demographics. Then we take a look at the breakup of race and ethnicity, where the white vote, you have 26% for Biden, 21% for Sanders, 16% for Warren, 10% for Buttigieg. The black vote still very much in the favor of Joe Biden there at 41%, but also respectable there certainly for Sanders at 26 percentage points, and then everyone else is at 10 percentage points or less. The Hispanic vote, you have Sanders at 33%, Biden at 23%, Warren at 11%. The Asian American vote has Biden at 25%, Sanders at 22%, and then Andrew Yang at 15% with Warren at 14%. And then those who identify something as other have Bernie Sanders at 37%, Joe Biden at 23%, Elizabeth Warren at 11%. So in terms of the other, I would assume this would be Native Americans, for instance. But if you guys can help me out, what else would be in this other category that would really be a large block of these numbers other than white, black, Hispanic, and Asian American? I'd love to hear more on what this other group might be made of, more or less. Is it just Native Americans, or is that going to be a big section of this other group, or is there something else that I'm missing in terms of this particular block of voters? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that down in the comment section. And then political ideology, liberal, it's tied between Biden and Sanders with Warren at 18%. Biden and Sanders each at 26%. Moderates are at Biden with 35%, Sanders at 18%, Bloomberg at 12%, Warren at 10%. And then conservative are Biden at 32%, Sanders at 16%, Bloomberg at 11%, Elizabeth Warren at 10 percentage points. Actually kind of interesting there. You have Tulsi Gabbard at 6% among the conservative voters, especially given how she's positioned herself, at least in the past, in terms of being more on the progressive side of things. That's changed a bit this time around, but she seems to be appealing more to those conservative voters than what we're seeing from the other voting blocks. Now, in terms of the second choice, I actually think there's going to be some shifting around in terms of second choice here in the coming weeks. So right now we see Biden, his second choice is Sanders at 29% and Warren at 20%. I don't think we're probably going to see all that much in the way of change from the Joe Biden second choicers. But with Sanders and Warren, with this manufactured story that we've had out of the Warren campaign, more or less trying to paint Bernie Sanders as a sexist, kind of throwing a Hail Mary pass here at the run-up towards this final phase before getting into the caucus and primary season. It reeks of desperation on the Warren campaign side of things that they would bring this up over a year after this private meeting was held, and the fact that the sources that leaked the story weren't even in the room in terms of the conversation that was had. It's just not a great look, in my opinion, and I'm not exactly sure what the goal here is from the Warren campaign. So essentially with them putting this story out there, they're trying to paint Bernie Sanders as being sexist, thinking he doesn't think a woman can be president, which goes against everything that he's stood for throughout his political career. And as a result of that, so what are they trying to do? Obviously, you're going to be alienating a large block of progressive voters, particularly many Bernie Sanders supporters who have Warren as their second choice at 33%. So you're not going to be able to win those people over. And are they thinking that somehow by putting this story out, that's going to be pulling in support from Biden or Pete Buttigieg or Michael Bloomberg supporters? I don't see the connection on how that would happen. So at the end of the day, I think this is more of a net negative for Warren, but still a really bad thing overall for the progressive movement, because I don't think it really helps Sanders in terms of expanding his base. It's likely to encourage his own supporters to be even more supportive of him and maybe, throw some more donations towards him as they feel like they're being betrayed by somebody else who is viewed as being in this progressive movement. But I'm not sure about this strategy that we're seeing. And as a result, I think it's likely that Bernie Sanders supporters drop Warren in terms of their second choice, and it ends up helping Biden at the end of the day, where I think he's probably going to move up into that second place spot. And we could even see that with Warren supporters as well throughout this entire process, where right now their second choice is Sanders at 34%, Biden at 23%. It wouldn't surprise me to see those two flip as well, and maybe Biden being now the second choice among Warren supporters. We'll see if that's going to be the case or not as we continue to get these morning consult polls coming out in the upcoming weeks. That'll be very interesting to see if that's the case or not. But then we see with Buttigieg, it is Biden there at 24, Warren at 18. The second choice among Bloomberg is Biden at 34, Buttigieg at 13. And then Cory Booker, who's now out of the race. Not a whole lot of his vote up for grabs, just 2% right now, but it's at Biden with 24, Sanders at 19, and then Warren at 17. So not likely to change all that much at the top of this picture with him bowing out of the race. And then we take a look at candidate favorability, and Bernie Sanders absolutely crushing it. I think this might be the best overall net favorability that we've seen from him throughout this entire process, at least in recent memory, where his unfavorables are at 17 and his net favorability is at just his favorables are at 75. And then his net favorables are significantly the best out of this group, given the fact that you have Joe Biden with a bit more unfavorable at 21% and then a little less favorable at 72 percentage points. And then you have Warren there. If you combine those numbers, we get 65 favorable compared to 19% unfavorable. All the top three candidates doing relatively solid in terms of that overall net favorability, but Sanders is showing the most strength in that instance. And then to wrap up these morning consult numbers, taking a look at the general election numbers, Sanders doing a bit better this week, where he's essentially doing almost about as well head-to-head as Joe Biden is against Donald Trump, where you have Bloomberg leading by 1 point, Warren leading by 2 points, and then Buttigieg at a 42-42 tie, whereas Biden has a 5-point lead and Sanders has a 4-point lead over Donald Trump. We take a look at the breakup between the voters that are Democratic, Republican, or Independent, and we see among the Democratic voters, all of these Democratic options doing very well, with Biden and Sanders doing the best in terms of that particular demographic. But then the real difference maker in the electability argument that Sanders has is doing very well among independent voters, and especially progressives who don't identify themselves as Democrats, but as just progressive independents. Getting this block of voters enthusiastic to come out and support somebody on the Democratic side is going to be important if the Democrats are going to try to go on and defeat Donald Trump in 2020. And it's showing in this instance that Bernie Sanders is doing very well among those independents at 42, Trump at 33, Biden at 38, Trump at 34, Bloomberg with a 2-point lead, Warren at a 50-50, 35-35 split, and then Buttigieg has a 1-point lead over Trump among those independent voters. And then the Republican voters, this is where Donald Trump does very well, not very surprising in that instance. And then you have Joe Biden getting 7% along with Bloomberg, with Bernie getting 6% of the Republican vote along with Warren. And then Buttigieg, actually, this kind of surprises me that he's only getting 4% of the Republican vote, as he's positioning himself as the religious guy on the Democratic side, which appeals to a lot of Republican voters, but also he's positioning himself more or less in the moderate lane of the Democrats, and that's his electability argument, is he can maybe try to pull in some of these disaffected Republican voters, but in this instance, he's only able to grab 4%, weaker than the other top options. So then just 3 more polls that I want to touch on, and I'm going to run through these much quicker than this morning consult poll. So starting off here, we have numbers from the Hill and Harris X, and Bernie actually doing the best in this poll that we've seen from him dating all the way back to the summer. So in this instance, he's still in second place. He moves up 3 points from where he was in the prior poll, and he was at 16 points in this one. He's at 19 percentage points in second place. Biden leading the way at 29%. He's up 1 point from where he was in the prior Harris X poll. And then Elizabeth Warren remains in third place at 11% unchanged. And then Bloomberg was at 7%, which is actually 4 points down from where he was in the prior result. Buttigieg only at 4 percentage points nationally, so down 2 points. Klobuchar was at 3 points, so she gained a point. Steyer also at 3 percentage points, picking up 1 point. Yang at 2%, and then Bennett actually at 2 percentage points in this one. Seems kind of an outlier considering he was registering 0 points in the prior poll that we got from the Hill and Harris X. So now a couple of state-specific results. This one is out of Nevada, and it shows a close race at the top where you have Biden Biden at around 19%, Sanders at around 17.5 percentage points in second place. The undecideds registered 21% in this instance, but more or less these are likely to be individuals that would be behind individuals like a Biden or a Sanders, which would push them up into a stronger first and second place position if these 21 people were actually leaning towards who they were going to decide as their first choice. Just my speculation on that. And then we see Elizabeth Warren there at around 10 percentage points and Buttigieg at 8%. It's going to be fascinating as we work our way through the first two states of Iowa and New Hampshire, which are both expected to be relatively competitive among the top four candidates, and how that possibly affects things as we move over to Nevada, which is expected to be much more bullish for Senator Sanders as well as former Vice President Biden. And then moving over to North Carolina, and this is an area that you would expect Biden to do pretty well. And that's what the polling numbers are indicating here, where he's at 31% in first place, Sanders in second at 18%, Warren at 15%, Michael Bloomberg at 8 percentage points, Buttigieg at 6, and then everyone else is a bit lower than that. Also, Andrew Yang there at 5 percentage points. So those are the 4 polls that I want to touch on here in today's video, and I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll link all of these polls down in the video description if you want to check them out for yourself. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more, and I'll see you guys back here for my next video.